The day my father's lawyer opened his leather folder and read aloud that every share of Price and Sons Logistics would pass to my older brother Robert, I knew the word family didn't mean the same thing to him as it did to me. My name is Jason Price. I'm 45 years old, and for 20 years I've been the man who kept our company alive. While Robert disappeared on golf trips or business retreats that looked a lot like vacations, I was in the warehouse at midnight checking shipments, renegotiating contracts, soothing angry clients. If the company was a body, I was its backbone. So when Dad died and the will was read in that polished oak conference room, I expected at least acknowledgement. Maybe 50-50, maybe even a controlling share for Robert, if Dad still believed in his golden boy. But what I got was worse than nothing. To my eldest son, Robert Price, I leave 100% of my equity in Price & Sons Logistics, the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. To my younger son, Jason Price, I leave the mantel clock that once belonged to my grandfather, symbol of steady hands and patience. A clock. I sat frozen while Robert smirked across the table, cufflinks gleaming. The clock wasn't even on the mantel anymore. It had been shoved in storage for years. The lawyer closed the folder. That concludes the reading. Robert clapped me on the shoulder like he was doing me a favor. Cheer up, little brother. At least you got a souvenir. And don't worry, I'll keep you around. Every king needs a servant who knows where the ledgers are. Laughter rippled from two of the board members, Dad's old golfing buddies who'd always fawned over Robert. My mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief but didn't speak. Heat rushed up my neck. Dad knew who kept this company afloat. He knew. Robert cut me off, voice slick. Dad knew you were dependable, Jason. Dependable like a desk chair. Useful, but not leadership material. Don't embarrass yourself. The room tilted. 2 decades of sacrifice dismissed with a smirk. When I left the building that day, clutching the folder the lawyer had handed me, inside it, the official copy of the will, I understood something sharp and cold. My father had chosen his favorite, and Robert had chosen to humiliate me. But I also knew this. Paper doesn't change truth, and one day, I'd make Robert choke on the empire he thought was his alone. The humiliation didn't end with the will. It only began there. 2 weeks later, Robert called for a family meeting in the executive boardroom. Same long mahogany table, same portraits of Dad glaring down from the walls. I walked in expecting tension. What I didn't expect was the full board. 7 men in suits, Dad's old golfing circle sitting like judges. Robert lounged at the head of the table, sipping espresso from a company mug with our logo on it. Jason, he said smoothly, we need to talk about your role going forward. My role. I'd spent 20 years as operations director. The man everyone relied on when trucks broke down at midnight or supply contracts wobbled. Without me, the place would have sunk twice over. One board member, Mr. Gaines, cleared his throat. Robert's inheriting full control, but he values you. He's proposing a transitional position. Robert leaned back, smile sharp. Assistant to the CEO. The words hit like a slap. Assistant? You know the details, Robert said casually. You'll handle scheduling, take notes, make sure my calendar runs smooth. No heavy lifting. I don't want you stressed. I stared at him. I've been running logistics for 2 decades. You wouldn't know a bill of lading from a grocery list. He chuckled. That's why I'll keep you around. But titles matter. The board needs to see leadership. And Dad trusted me with that. Not you. Mr. Gaines nodded. It's for stability, Jason. Don't make this harder than it has to be. My jaw clenched. You mean stability for Robert's ego? Robert stood, walking slowly around the table until he was inches from me. His cologne was sharp, expensive. Listen carefully, little brother. Dad never saw you as more than a caretaker. I'm the heir. You're the help. If you can't accept that, maybe there's no place for you here at all. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles went white. You wouldn't dare. He leaned in, voice low. Try me. The boardroom went silent except for the ticking of Dad's old clock on the wall. The same kind of clock he'd left me in his will, as if to drive the insult home. I shoved back my chair. You think inheriting paper makes you a leader? You've never put in an honest day's work here. You gamble, you drink, you pose for photographs. I've bled for this company. Robert smirked. And yet, Dad gave it to me. That must sting. The board shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Their loyalty was clear. I stormed out, pulse pounding, humiliation boiling into rage. Behind me, I heard Robert's voice echo through the boardroom. Don't worry, gentlemen. He'll come crawling back. He always does. Outside, the air was sharp with winter cold. I stood on the steps, staring at the company sign, the name Price & Sons gleaming under the streetlight. My name, my sweat, my life. And in that moment, betrayal burned away any last illusions I had. Dad had chosen Robert. The board had chosen Robert. Even my mother, silent at the will reading, had chosen to keep peace instead of truth. I had been erased. But if Robert thought I would crawl, he was about to learn how wrong he was. The exile began quietly, like rot spreading under fresh paint. Monday morning, my company email wouldn't load. I called IT. Strange, the text said after a pause. Your account's been deactivated. Orders from upstairs. Upstairs. Robert. By lunch, my security badge no longer opened the side entrance I'd used for 20 years. The guard shrugged, embarrassed. They've got you on visitor status, Jason. Sorry. Visitor. In the company I'd practically built. I tried to call Mom, straight to voicemail. An hour later, she texted, Please don't make this worse. Robert says you're fighting change. Let it go, let it go. That evening, I checked the family group chat. Dozens of messages about the company's new era. Photos of Robert at the head table, champagne glass raised, board members flanking him. I scrolled further until the app notified me. You are no longer a participant in this group. He hadn't just taken my job. He'd taken my seat at the family table. Kyle, my 19-year-old son, came home from college that weekend. He dropped his duffel in the hall and looked at me carefully. Dad, Uncle Robert says you're making trouble. He says Grandpa wanted him in charge, and you're just bitter. My throat tightened. Kyle, you know how many nights I missed tucking you in because I was at the warehouse? I kept that company alive. Robert couldn't balance a checkbook if his life depended on it. Kyle shifted uneasily. I know, but everyone's saying maybe you should just move on. The words stung worse than Robert's smirk. My own son doubted me, not out of malice, but because the chorus around him was so loud. By the end of the week, even old friends at the office avoided me. Jim from procurement crossed the street rather than shake my hand. Maria from accounting muttered something about not wanting to get caught in the middle. Isolation pressed in like a vice. Nights, I sat alone in the living room, the mantel clock ticking steady, mocking. The one inheritance I'd been granted. I stared at it until the hands blurred. Robert was winning. He had the board. He had the family. He even had Kyle leaning his way. But solitude has a way of sharpening the edges of grief. In that silence, anger hardened into something colder, clearer. I remembered what Dad used to say when I was a boy. Paper trails don't lie, Jason. People do, but numbers always tell the truth. If Robert thought he could isolate me into surrender, he'd forgotten one thing. I knew where the numbers lived. And if I could find proof, real proof, his empire of favoritism would collapse on his head. The break came from the one place Robert never thought to guard, an old shoebox in Dad's office closet. I drove to the house late on a Thursday, heart pounding like I was robbing my own childhood home. Mom answered the door, surprised. "Jason, it's late." "I just need to grab some of Dad's old notebooks," I said gently, "for closure." She hesitated but stepped aside. "Don't stay long." The office smelled like cedar and dust. Dad's handwriting still covered the walls, flow charts, scribbled equations. On the top shelf sat the shoebox, labeled only with a year, 2018. Inside, ledger books, receipts, and 3 manila envelopes marked trust drafts. My breath caught. Dad had been working with the estate lawyer years before his death, and here it was, his original plan. The trust documents were explicit. 60% of the company to me, 40% to Robert. A note in Dad's handwriting added, "Jason's stability ensures continuity. Robert lacks discipline. Adjust if he proves himself." I snapped photos of every page with my phone, hands shaking. The next step came faster than I expected. Robert hosted a celebration dinner at the Oakwood Country Club, complete with local press. He wanted a headline about the next chapter of Holloway Logistics. I showed up uninvited. Gasps rippled as I walked through the ballroom doors in my old Navy suit, phone in hand. Robert's smile froze. "Jason," he said through clenched teeth, "this is a private event." "Private?" I raised my voice just enough for the nearest tables to hear. Strange word for a company Dad built with both his sons. Murmurs spread. People leaned in. Reporters adjusted their cameras. I pulled up the photos on my phone and projected them onto the ballroom's big screen, the one Robert had been using for his slideshow. Dad's handwriting filled the wall behind me. "Jason's stability ensures continuity." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers. One board member, Mrs. Carver, stood abruptly. "Robert, is this true? We were told the will was final." Robert's face turned crimson. "These are forgeries. He's desperate." I flipped to the second envelope, Dad's correspondence with the estate lawyer. Signatures, dates, drafts, everything time-stamped. "They're not forgeries," I said evenly. "They're Dad's original intent. You had the drafts buried, but numbers don't lie." Phones came out. Flashes popped. Reporters scribbled furiously. Robert lunged forward, voice cracking. "He's twisting the story. Dad chose me in the final version." "Then why did you hide these drafts?" Mrs. Carver demanded. "Why did you push Jason out within days of the funeral?" The noise swelled into chaos. Executives whispering, family members confronting Mom, who sat trembling at her table. I stepped closer to the mic. "Robert isolated me, cut me out of the company I gave 20 years to, but Dad's own hand says otherwise, and if anyone doubts, we can let a forensic analyst and the courts decide." The ballroom buzzed like a hive. My phone vibrated with messages. Kyle, my son, texting, "Dad, I saw the live stream. Is it true?" "Yes," I typed back. "Come see for yourself." In that moment, Robert wasn't just my brother. He was a man cornered in front of his entire world. And cornered men make mistakes. 2 days after the country club eruption, the real blow landed. Not from Robert's temper, but from the bank. I was in line at Valley First Credit Union when the teller frowned at her screen. "Mr. Holloway, there's a hold on your joint account. Do you have another form of payment?" A hold? My stomach lurched. That account carried my mortgage payments, Kyle's tuition installments, and most of my savings. I drove straight to the branch manager's office. She pulled up the file and looked at me with wary sympathy. The trust is under legal dispute. Your brother filed an emergency motion claiming sole authority as executor. Until the court sorts it out, all disbursements are frozen. Frozen? I repeated, heat rising in my face. Yes, including the insurance payout from your father's policy. A total of $480,000 remains inaccessible. I gripped the arm of the chair. That money was earmarked for estate taxes and college funds. My son's semester starts in 3 weeks. She spread her hands helplessly. Until the court clears the injunction, there's nothing we can release. Robert hadn't just tried to erase me from the company. He'd gone for my financial throat. That evening, Kyle stormed into the kitchen, his phone in hand. "Dad, Uncle Robert says you're bankrupt. He posted about it." He shoved the screen at me. Robert had updated his LinkedIn, assuming full fiscal responsibility after my brother's mismanagement forced court intervention. Dozens of comments congratulated him on stepping up. I could barely breathe. "Kyle, listen to me. This isn't mismanagement. It's theft. He froze what Dad left us so I'd look weak." Kyle's jaw clenched. "Then fight back. Prove him wrong." Those words stuck like steel. The next morning I called Mrs. Carver, the board member who'd challenged Robert at the dinner. She agreed to meet at a diner off I-17. Her first words, "Jason, the board's spooked. Robert promised he'd secure a $2 million line of credit by next quarter. If he fails, he's out. But he's gambling with collateral, your father's life insurance and company pension funds." The room tilted. "He can't do that. Those assets are protected." "Not if he convinces the bank the trust is uncontested. He's already submitted paperwork." My heart hammered. Robert wasn't just stealing from me. He was risking every retiree who'd trusted Holloway Logistics for their pensions. I drove home in silence, fury building. Dad's ledger sat on my dining table, the old clock ticking above it. "Numbers don't lie," I heard his voice whisper again. I opened the shoebox of drafts once more and spotted something I'd missed before. A check carbon, faint but legible. A $50,000 withdrawal Robert had made in Dad's final months, signed under power of attorney. But the signature wasn't Dad's. I'd seen Dad's shaky hand near the end. This one was smooth, confident, forged. If Robert forged checks while Dad was alive, and now gambled with life insurance funds, then I didn't just have family drama, I had criminal fraud. I dialed Frank Sullivan, the forensic accountant Mrs. Carver recommended. His voice was gravelly, no nonsense. "Bring me everything. If what you're saying is true, your brother's house of cards is about to collapse." Frank moved fast. Within 4 days, he had forensic reports on my desk. Side-by-side scans of Dad's genuine shaky signature and Robert's smooth forgeries. Bank withdrawal slips, estate drafts, even emails Robert had edited before filing them with the court. "This isn't favoritism anymore," Frank said flatly. "It's fraud, wire fraud if he touched electronic records. You want the blow to land? Hit him where he thinks he's untouchable, public and legal at once." So we set the stage. The Holloway Foundation Gala, an annual event Robert loved to flaunt, was 3 nights away. He'd booked the downtown Hyatt ballroom, invited city officials, even promised a keynote about integrity in family business. Frank nearly choked laughing when he read that. We prepared a package, forensic reports, bank slips, a timeline of forged signatures, plus a sworn affidavit from Mrs. Carver confirming Robert's attempt to leverage pension funds. Frank said, "If you're going to swing, Jason, swing in the open. Shame works faster than subpoenas. The night of the gala, I walked into the Hyatt in my one good suit. People stared. Half shocked I showed up, half expecting a scene. Robert stood at the podium, spotlight on his smug face, the mantel clock from Dad's office displayed beside him as a prop. "Tonight," he boomed, "we honor legacy and the bright future of Holloway Logistics, a company built on trust." I couldn't stomach another word. I stepped onto the stage. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Funny you mention trust, Robert." My voice carried sharper than I expected. "Because Dad trusted us both, and you repaid him with a pen full of lies." Whispers surged. Robert's smile faltered. "Jason, this isn't the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time." I held up Frank's binder. "This is a forensic report of every forged check you signed under Dad's so-called power of attorney. See this one? 50 grand siphoned before he even passed. That's theft. And this," I flipped a page to blown-up email metadata, "shows you falsified estate records to freeze the insurance payout. That's wire fraud." The room broke into murmurs, then open outrage. One board member rose from his seat. "Is this true?" Robert's face went blotchy red. "Baseless accusations. My brother's bitter because he lost influence." Mrs. Carver stood up. "I've seen the reports. He's telling the truth. And you, Robert, tried to pledge pension funds for your loan scheme. That alone would bury this company." Phones came out. Flashes popped. Half the donors whispered into cameras, live streaming the entire unraveling. Robert lunged for the microphone, but I held it firm. "You erased me from group chats, from boardrooms, even from Mom's phone. But numbers don't lie. And Dad's clock," I pointed at the mantel clock displayed beside him, ticking steady under the lights, "isn't yours to wave around like a trophy. It's proof of who actually kept his time." Security moved in as Robert shouted, "This is defamation! I'll sue!" Frank, standing at the back, raised his phone. "Already filed with the district court, son. You'll be served in the morning." The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some jeered. But Robert's empire cracked right there under the chandeliers. When the dust settled, Robert was escorted out the side door, his keynote drowned by reporters shouting questions. For the first time in months, I wasn't the isolated brother. I was the one holding the truth, in full view of everyone who'd believed his lies. The days after the gala moved like an avalanche, slow at first, then impossible to stop. News outlets ran headlines. "Family business rocked by forgery scandal." Robert's face, once plastered across glossy brochures, now sat beneath words like fraud and embezzlement. Federal investigators froze every account he'd touched. The board suspended him indefinitely. Even Mom, who had defended him until her voice broke, sat across from me at her kitchen table with trembling hands. "I don't understand," she whispered. "How could Robert do this? Your father, he trusted him." I slid the binder across to her. The evidence Frank compiled. She skimmed the signatures, the emails, the timeline. Her eyes filled. "And you carried this alone until you couldn't anymore." "Yes, Mom." My voice cracked. "I wanted to protect you. But protecting you meant letting him steal everything Dad built. I couldn't let that stand." She reached across, squeezed my hand. "Jason, I believed his words over your silence. I was wrong." That small confession eased a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Kyle came home from campus that weekend. He dropped his backpack, looked at me with the same wary eyes as weeks before. "Dad, I saw the news. Everyone knows now." I nodded. "You think less of me?" He shook his head hard. "No. I thought maybe you were bitter. But you fought back with proof. That's not bitterness. That's strength. He hesitated, then added, I'm proud of you. The words hit deeper than any headline. As for Robert, his lawyers called, pleading for a settlement, a brotherly compromise. They wanted me to withdraw charges, return the company to internal arbitration. I sat in Frank's office, phone on speaker. You want forgiveness? I asked flatly. Yes, Robert's attorney said, for the sake of the family. I leaned closer to the mic. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't gamble with pensions. He made his choice. Now he lives with it. Silence followed. Then the lawyer sighed. We'll see you in court. That night, I poured a glass of Dad's old bourbon and sat beneath the mantel clock. The steady tick was no longer mockery. It was vindication. I hadn't just exposed Robert. I'd reclaimed my voice in a family that once treated me as background noise. Forgiveness? Maybe someday, but not today. Today was about choosing truth over convenience, integrity over silence. The court battle stretched into months, but the outcome was never in doubt. With Frank's forensic evidence, Mrs. Carver's testimony, and the paper trail Robert left behind, the judge stripped him of all authority over the estate. He now faced criminal charges, his bail set higher than any favor he could call in. When the gavel fell that final day, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled, slow and steady, as though I'd been holding my breath since the night my email stopped working. Reporters swarmed outside the courthouse. Jason, what do you say to your brother? Microphones pushed at my face. I paused, looked at the chaos, the flashing lights, the crowd hungry for a quote. Then I said simply, numbers don't lie, and neither will I. Mom hugged me on the courthouse steps, fragile but firmer than I'd seen her in years. Kyle stood beside me, tall and proud, his arm slung across my shoulder. For the first time since Dad's funeral, we looked like a family again. I sold the big house not long after. Too many memories, too many shadows in the corners. Bought a modest place on the edge of town, with space for Kyle when he visits, and a workbench in the garage where I can tinker without anyone questioning my worth. The mantel clock came with me, of course. I keep it above my desk, steady tick marking each new chapter. Dad's words echo every time it strikes the hour. Paper trails don't lie, Jason. People do, but numbers always tell the truth. Holloway Logistics survived, barely. With Robert gone, the board begged me to return, this time as director. I declined. I'd given 20 years already. Now it was time to build something of my own. I started a consulting firm, small at first. But within 6 months, 3 former clients had called saying, Jason, we trust you. Where you go, we'll follow. Trust. That word, once poisoned, began to heal. Do I miss my brother? In some twisted way, yes. But missing someone isn't the same as excusing them. Robert chose greed over family, lies over legacy. His prison sentence will be long, but the damage to his name is longer. And me? I walk lighter now. Lighter because I chose to stand, chose to fight, chose myself. So if you're listening, remember this. Betrayal doesn't end you. Sometimes it carves out the silence you need to hear your own voice again. I choose me. Tell me what you'd do. Drop your story and subscribe. Revenge Stories Men U50 USA.